Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to be talking about The Amazing Spider-Man number 34. Just as a heads up, I will be talking about the comic book in its entirety, so if you haven't read it, spoiler warning ahead. And then at the end, I will be giving my thoughts and opinions on it, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And if you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's begin. We start this issue at the Harlem Hospital Center, and we're joined by two characters, Randy and Janice. And this is the first time they're actually meeting face to face with each other since their wedding went crazy back in issue 31. Janice is voicing to Randy how she's deeply upset with him that he hasn't even attempted talking to her since that moment, and it has been quite some time. She tells him how he has time to actually petition to the mayor to reduce crime in the city. Randy tries justifying this by telling her that if he sees something go wrong, he has to be proactive and do something about it, and she takes this as Randy actively seeking to go after criminals, basically people like her and her dad who are, the Beetle and Tombstone. Before things get really spicy in the conversation, they start hearing a flatlining beep, and they start questioning what's going on, and it's coming from Tombstone's hospital room. The hospital staff run into the room to find out what's going on, and the doctor's questioning who turned the ventilator off. Another doctor that's there with them trying to figure it out says someone unplugged it. Both Randy and Janice are in complete shock, and Randy notices a figure jump out of the window, so he goes to run after it to see who it is. He looks at the window, and it's Spider-Man just laughing maniacally as he's swinging through the city. And Randy questions to himself, is that only for us to assume it's Spider-Man? Then we're at Mary Jane's apartment, and Paul's there, of course. Norman walks in, and he's questioning to them, like, why haven't they been answering their phone? Paul tells Norman that they just don't want to be bothered. Seeing that Norman's freaking out, MJ questions whether Norman's okay. And Norman tells him that he's not. He's trying to desperately tell him to get off of the island because he knows Spider-Man's gonna go after them. Norman keeps telling them how they're in danger and that something's gotten into Peter. MJ tries asking if she can do anything to help, but realistically, I don't know why Paul doesn't just do something here. Isn't he like a tech whiz or something? Maybe they just don't have the time for it. So far, the most that Norman tells them is that they're in danger. But MJ's like, I can take care of myself. What's gotten into you? And Norman says, not me. Something's gotten into Peter. MJ questions if she can do anything to help, but Norman just responds with no. Norman proceeds to tell him, what I mean to say is, Peter sent me. Someone is trying to make him look unhinged, hurting people he may hold a grudge against, no matter how petty it is. Both MJ and Paul look at each other, and MJ says, better safe than sorry, and Paul responds, I'll get the car. Paul proceeds to start talking about the route that he wants to take, and he's thinking of taking the bridge. And Osborn grabs him by the shoulder and says, trust me, take the tunnel. With Paul and MJ desperately trying to get out of New York, we move over to Kraven, who's still in the casket underground, and it's just himself and his thoughts, plus the other crazy voice that it's in his head, that seems to continuously degrade him or push him towards things that he doesn't want to do. With that being said, he does look at the gun that Spider-Man tossed into the casket with him before he buried him alive, and he starts questioning which darkness will take him first. After successfully persuading Paul and MJ to move out of New York for the time being, Norman is just seen alone in the dark with his thoughts. And he's thinking to himself, what are you doing, Norman? A grown man sitting in the dark? Turn on the light. Don't you want him to come? You can talk to him. Make sure he's okay. Or are you scared? Because you know what's inside him. Because you know what you have to do. No. Stop this. You're a grown man. Turn on the light. He reaches for the lamp to turn it on, but as he clicks it on, we get revealed that Spider-Man's standing right behind him, towering over him. Norman quickly turns around and looks at him, and Spider-Man says, hello, Norman. Norman questions, Peter? And Spider-Man questions, you haven't seen Paul around, have you? Norman questions, why? Spider-Man responds, no reason, and starts laughing. Norman starts talking to Spider-Man out of this by telling him this isn't like him, and Spider-Man responds, I'm not like me anymore. I'm like you. referring to his Green Goblin persona, which he hasn't had in quite some time. And at this very moment, as this is happening, we cut back over to Kraven, who's still in this casket, and he's just lighting matches just so he has the light. His dark thoughts keep persuading him to deal with life the same way his father did, and take the dark route. But this particular Kraven is very persistent. He's not gonna go that route. So he starts stomping at the end of the coffin, trying to get out. In doing so, he does end up breaking the coffin, but dirt starts to pile in very quickly. While Kraven's desperately trying to get out of the coffin, we also come back to what Spider-Man's saying to Norman Osborn, and he says, "Do you know why I tolerate your existence, Norman? I didn't realize it until my mind caught fire. It's because I know someday you'll show your true colors again, and I'll get a chance to do what I should have done years ago." Spider-Man grabs Norman and lifts him up. Norman keeps trying to plead with Spider-Man, saying, "Peter, please, I'm your friend." And this trips Spider-Man up. He's like, "Friend?" Tosses him across the room. Spider-Man says, "Do you think I forgot what you did?" As this is going on, we get a few small panels still portraying Kraven inside of the coffin, and he's getting buried alive by the dirt that's just now flowing in. He thinks to himself how he's just gonna quickly suffocate. We come back to Spider-Man, who's dealing with Norman, and he's just pounding at his face. Spider-Man saying, "What mercy did you show Gwen? Answer me that, Norman. Answer me." Norman, who's just beaten to a pulp, tries answering, "None. I showed her none. And I live in hell because of it. Don't let him do this to you, Peter," referring to the Green Goblin, who's inside of Peter's head at the moment, influencing him to do all of this. And for those of you that don't know, Spider-Man ended up getting impaled by one of Kraven's spear that happened to have the Green Goblin curse onto it back in issue 32. If you want to find out more, just watch my video. After Norman gets heavily beaten, we get the very first glimpse of the voice that's actually in Spider-Man's head. Yeah, previously we have heard the voice in like the past issue, but this is the first time it's actually portrayed as the Green Goblin, where they straight up just tell us. And the Green Goblin in his voice is saying, "Leave him. We have a pressing appointment elsewhere," referring to the revenge that he's gonna have on Paul and MJ. Spider-Man quickly beats Norman a few more times. Green Goblin in his voice is just laughing, and the Green Goblin is just saying, "Attaboy." And just to quickly point out, the artist that worked on this comic, he is definitely portraying this violent scene very well. Like, this is very gruesome for a Spider-Man comic, to be honest. But I'm enjoying it. I like it. Norman, who's just close to falling unconscious, is being talked to by Spider-Man, and Spider-Man says, "This feeling. It's why you did everything, isn't it, Norman? I thought it was a fluke when I buried Kraven alive, but it was not. The people who hurt you, it feels so good to hurt them back. I'm going to get all of you. I'll throw Otto into a nuclear reactor, feed Eddie his own brain, but first I'm going to pay a visit to Paul and Mary Jane." Norman's desperately just trying with his few words that he can muster, says, "Leave them alone." But Spider-Man gets up and close to his face and says, "I wish I could, but when I think of throwing Paul off the top of the bridge, seeing if MJ can catch him with her fancy new powers, I gotta tell you, it just makes me smile." And once again, this artwork is chef's kiss, portraying this violence very well. After that horrifying scene, we cut over to the Queen Goblin, who's still hanging out at Kraven's estate, and we're following her thoughts, and she's thinking to herself, "Of all people, I should know the definition of insanity. And still, I tried every mirror in the house. They all showed me the same thing. Norman's sins may be gone, but I'm still the queen. Our ceremony went awry, and Kraven pays the price. Do I feel guilt, or am I just desperate to believe I've changed? Absent Osborn's curse, will I let my lover die for my obsessions? Only one way to find out." She grabs her weapon, and we're only left to assume what she's up to. Now, as you remember from earlier, Kraven was getting buried alive by the dirt that was just flowing into the coffin because he's just destroyed it, trying to get out. Now, we've gotten to the point where he's given one last chance to actually take the easy way out and use the weapon that Spider-Man tossed into the coffin. But in this case, he would rather just suffocate in the dirt instead of take the easy way out using that weapon. And in this sense, he overcame his negative thoughts by claiming that he is not his father. He is his own person, and he is not going to do what his father does. And we're left with Kraven suffocating. Next, we move over to MJ and Paul, who are making their way through the tunnel as Osborn suggested. Paul says, "Knew we should have taken the bridge. You believe the stuff Norman was saying? And he's just being salty just because there's a traffic jam. MJ responds, I don't know. It's Norman Osborn. He's not exactly a stranger to paranoia. But it's like they say, paranoia doesn't mean no one's out to. They start hearing boom, boom, boom noises coming out from the distance. And these next few moments happen so fast, I had to just stare at the page to make sure I was actually absorbing the events correctly. So Spider-Man shows up gliding in this special goblin glider. This looks different than what we've seen in the past. This one has claws and it's black, and as Spider-Man's flying with it, he's just dropping his goblin bombs and it drops little spiders. I don't know what they do, but for sure the explosion still happens, so there's still damage and fire that it's going on, but these spiders, I don't know what they do. And as the chaos is ensuing, Spider-Man's glider gets knocked off and he gets detached from it. And like I said, I had to really analyze the page because I didn't even see Spider-Man get knocked off in that last panel that they're showing you. Can't quite tell if it's like a civilian that's just running for his life or if it's Spider-Man just getting knocked off, but in this sense, it is Spider-Man getting knocked off. In that same exact moment, we cut over to Kraven again, who's just narrating to himself his own thoughts as he's dying. He's thinking to himself, no more fire in my lungs. There is only darkness now, and quiet. Such a beautiful quiet. He starts hearing a thump-thump noise, and he's questioning, the last beats of my heart? He hears an even louder thump noise. Closer. He opens his eyes and he starts seeing a light. And he's thinking to himself, light? Like dying. Or being reborn? And from this point to the very end of the comic, we have very simultaneous events going on. After Spider-Man gets the glider knocked off of him and he's getting up, he's questioning who knocked him off. And he glances up and sees who it is. And it's the Queen Goblin. She says, this is not your destiny. And as that's happening, we cut over to Kraven, who's still getting dug out of the ground by a mysterious character. This mysterious character tells him to pull, damn it, because he's holding onto the staff that was used to imbue Spider-Man with the goblin sins, but in this case, the mysterious character is using it to pull Kraven out of the ground, as Kraven himself is holding onto the staff, effectively pulling Kraven out of the ground, and we see Kraven struggling for air, and we get revealed that the mysterious character is Norman Osborn who saved him. Norman says, and you're going to help me put it right. And to put some context into what he said, it's just assumed that the Queen Goblin and Norman Osborn said the same exact thing at the same exact time. So as the Queen Goblin said to Spider-Man, this is not your destiny, Norman finished the sentence by saying, and you're going to help me put it right. And we're left on a to be continue. So what do I think about the comic book itself? Well, I honestly enjoyed it quite a bit. This issue actually had me going back and rereading some of the previous issues just to make sure I had some of the plot points correct. So far, with this specific The Amazing Spider-Man comic run, I haven't felt the need to actually go back and get some of those plot points straight. With this one, I did, and it ended up putting some of the things more into perspective, making me consider Spider-Man's dialogue not cringe, so there's that. For a story where Spider-Man definitely just goes crazy and just does revenge on every character that just did him wrong in the past or for any petty reason, this story's alright. For starters, they ended up bringing Janice back and they actually had her interact with Randy for the very first time. Randy's perspective definitely doesn't make any sense. This dude is fighting crime, but his girlfriend is a part of the crime syndicate, but that's just the life hassle this guy's given, I suppose. And then to make the hook even juicier, we actually get a moment where canonically Spider-Man unplugs a character's life support. That's crazy. This guy's freaking diabolical. I love it. The moments with MJ and Paul in the past have definitely felt kind of dull, and I've just in general felt sluggish just reading them. In this issue, they were pretty quick and concise. Like, there's really not much to them. It's just Norman just trying to get them out of New York to safety. I do question though, like, why Paul and MJ can't help in this scenario. Like, are they short on time in this case? MJ does have powers now, supposedly. They're the random powers. And then Paul is like a tech wizard. Maybe it's just the fact that we're dealing with some supernatural stuff that Kraven pulled out. Maybe it's out of his area of expertise, but then again, they were in a different dimension dealing with some crazy symbol magic. So I'm not sure why Paul can't help here. Maybe because the dude just wanted to sit back and watch TV for the evening, and then Norman showed up and told him to leave New York. Like I said, those Paul and MJ moments, I just feel sluggish reading them, but in this comic, they're just not too bad. And I thought the moments with Kraven where he's stuck in the coffin very impactful, because even though he was given all these negative thoughts, inevitably he didn't succumb to them, which was what caused his reborn in the end. So I thought that was quite impactful for sure. And then there's the small segments with the Queen Goblin. So far she seems like a very neutral character in these events, until she does show up at the very end where she meets Spider-Man. That's definitely one of the plot lines I'm looking forward to for the next issue. How is she gonna interact with Spider-Man? How is she gonna influence him in whatever form? And then once again, as a reminder, MJ and Paul are in that same tunnel, so we're gonna see how this plays out here. This is gonna get kind of interesting, we'll see. And last but not least, the main character of the comic book itself, Spider-Man. So this book definitely sold the fact that Spider-Man is unhinged. With the way the comic book started where he unplugged Tombstone's life support, I thought that was definitely funny and for sure a goofy way to set the mood where Spider-Man's just gonna go around being a dick now. So I just thought, oh haha, he just unplugged the ventilator, that's kind of funny, that's goofy, whatever. So I went into this comic sort of thinking, oh, Spider-Man's just gonna mess with these characters in the silliest ways possible. And then we got to the point where he was actually beating Norman to a pulp. The artwork portrayed Spider-Man as this incredibly psychotic dude. That, and combined with the fact that they actually had more visual on the Green Goblin voice, like this one had the Green Goblin sort of behind Spider-Man telling him sort of what to do as he was beating up Norman. And it portrayed what Spider-Man is definitely capable of doing in this current state. And so with that new renowned way of seeing Spider-Man going crazy, I definitely had to go back and read the past two issues again. Because like I said, I used to think his dialogue was corny in those comics, but this one really made it seem to fit everything very concise. You go back and read those and like, oh, the dude was really not messing around. There's one other thing about that though. Spider-Man does get revenge on Gwen's death that Norman Osborn caused like 700 issues ago. I mean, I like the fact that he got revenge on Norman Osborn, but then again, that's also not a Spider-Man character thing to do, even in like the black suit. But I'm willing to accept that the Green Goblin being inside of his head is really influencing him in those decisions. Like, I like the way that Norman got his comeuppance, but come on, it was an issue from like 700 issues ago. Norman really has to get his comeuppance right now? Overall, I definitely enjoyed the comic book. It was a lot of fun. Anyways, I appreciate you guys for listening to me talk about this comic book, and if you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.